Hi everyone, and welcome to our solution-based learning, taking steps to climate action to address extreme weather. We look very forward to taking you through steps to relieve climate anxiety in your students by having them take climate action into their own hands. So first, we would like to acknowledge that we are presenting today from the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And this is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. This land, now known as Toronto, is covered by Treaty 13 and has been a place of gathering and learning for many generations of the Indigenous peoples. We are committed to learning from and taking meaningful actions that uplift and empower Indigenous communities. So to get started, I just wanted to introduce myself and Maria. So I am Katie, and I'm the Environmental Education Engagement Manager here at Green Learning, and Maria is the Environmental Education Engagement Coordinator. So we will be facilitating this workshop today for you guys. So just a little bit about Green Learning. If any of you are not so familiar with our organization, we offer free online education programs that really focus on energy, climate change, and green economy. So we work with schools, school boards, various educational organizations all across Canada. And our goal and our mission is to really inspire you educators to engage your students, to really empower them to create some sort of change. So all of Green Learning's programs align with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which we'll touch on a little bit later. So on today's agenda, we're going to be talking about eco-anxiety. So what it specifically is, what kind of causes it and such. Then we're going to go into talking about extreme weather in the form of flooding, and then looking at different steps to climate action that you can take. And then we're also going to show you guys how our programs and our activities really connect with your curriculum. And at the end, if you have any questions or answers, you will be able to email us at the email that is provided up on the screen there. So to start off with, eco-anxiety. Eco-anxiety is that distress that comes from current environmental issues and future environmental harm that's a result of human activity. And eco-anxiety we're seeing is becoming much more apparent in today's world amongst youth. So here up in the right-hand corner, you can see I have this climate emotions wheel, and this comes from the Climate Mental Health Network. And you can see there's so many different emotions that come up when it comes to eco-anxiety. We have the main 4 categories: anger, positivity, sadness, and fear. And each of these are then grouped into different emotions that kind of break down those core emotions. And so a few major causes of eco-anxiety are actually climate change, pollution, natural disasters, and deforestation. So in a time of eco-anxiety, I want us to do an activity on looking at what brings you joy. So I want you really thinking about what brings you joy and how you can use that joy to create climate action. So on a piece of paper, what I want you to do is draw a Venn diagram that looks just like this with these 3 overlapping circles. And in the top circle, I want you to really think about what brings you joy. Think of different sources of satisfaction and delight. Then in this left bottom circle, you're going to brainstorm, what are you good at? I want you to think about your skills, your networks, your different resources that you have. And then in the bottom right circle, I want you to think about what work needs doing, okay? What are some climate and justice solutions? And then your middle circle there that's highlighted in yellow, you're going to then come up with your own climate action. So I have an example up here, just of something that I quickly pulled together here, just to kind of get you guys thinking and starting on different things. So what brings me joy? So when I think of what brings me joy, I think about going out into nature, being part of the outdoors, and really photographing wildlife. I love capturing what different wildlife do out there and just seeing them in their natural element. Also, I really enjoy hiking with my dog. That really brings me a lot of joy. Again, being outdoors and being able to see my dog play in the leaves and be really excited to go on his walk. Then I think about, what am I good at? So I'm good at being really creative. I'm also really good at communicating. And so I'm really thinking of the skills that I have. So I really want you to think about the skills that you have. And then what work needs doing. So to me, I think there needs to be more policies in place to really protect biodiversity and more recognition on the importance of climate and biodiversity education. And then finally, my climate action is to use my photos that I take of wildlife, of what brings me joy, and their surrounding environment to really tell a story and raise awareness about their importance on ecosystem communities. So this is a really good activity for you to even bring into your classroom to do with your students to really understand their perspective and their mind in what brings them joy, what are they good at, and what do they think needs doing. Having their perspective is so important, and thinking about how they can go ahead and take climate action, whether the step is small or whether it's big, it's all the same. It's taking a step towards climate action. So at this point, I do want you guys to take about 5 minutes to complete this activity. All right, so before moving on, at this point, you could share what brings you joy. So if you're doing this activity with other educators, please feel free to share with each other. If you're doing this in your classroom, please allow your students to share with each other each of the different components from this Venn diagram. All right, so as just discussed, we know that climate change and natural disasters are two of the main causes of eco-anxiety. And these two are also in relation to extreme weather events, such as flooding. And flooding is an area of dry land that's covered with water, or an area that's really submerged. And flooding can come in so many different forms. It can be small, can have medium flooding, or you could have really large floods. So your small floods would be those, maybe snow is melting and a little bit is kind of trickling into your basement. Or you could have large floods, which are like tsunamis that happen in countries all over the world, and they flood and they take over everywhere. So my question then to you is, in what ways do you see climate change and natural disasters influencing the frequency and intensity of flooding events in your region? So I want you to take a few minutes here to brainstorm what ways you think. If you are doing this then with some other educators, please feel free to share with each other your ideas. If you're doing this with a class, please have them do this individually, and then you guys can kind of brainstorm as a class. This is also a good question to bring into your classroom for students to think about and get their perspective. So flooding, as I said, this is a big cause. This is a big reaction to extreme weather events. So we have natural causes of flooding, which can be heavy rainfall, snow melt, storm surges, rivers overflowing, so many different natural causes. But then we can have causes that are actually caused by us humans. So this can involve urbanization, deforestation, if our drainage systems aren't doing too well, dam failures, and even climate change, us contributing to climate change. So next we're going to look at what impacts flooding has on urban, rural, and suburban communities. So our first one up is infrastructure damage. So floodings can cause problems to roads and transportation. It can cause access issues. Roads could be washed out, bridges could be impassable. So many things can be caused to infrastructure. Next is our drainage system. So where we have overflow, which can cause sewage backup. Okay, so it's really important that our drainage systems are intact, that nothing is blocking them so that we don't get that backup. And then we have property damage. So with property damage, this is damage to our homes and to our businesses. Okay, this can be very detrimental economically. And then we also have agricultural losses. So damage to farms and crops. So which you can see in this photo here, this is farmland that has been flooded, which can then ultimately lead to the damage of people's crops, which then causes a decline in their livelihood. And then we have public health. So, water contamination. We really have to make sure that our water does not become contaminated. We also have to be aware of mold and mildew buildup. And then finally, we have ecosystem losses from flooding. Flooding can take out all these different ecosystems that we really rely on to survive. So, each of these damages and losses that come from flooding all have one thing in common, and that is economic losses. So can cause business closures, can cause schools or offices to close, or there can be caused significant financial losses. Also, farming or natural resources in rural communities. So different areas can get hit in really different ways. So it's really important that we address flooding. So at this point now, Maria is going to take you through the different steps that you can take to climate action.
Yeah, so we've talked quite a bit about the impacts of flooding and things like eco-anxiety and climate anxiety, and bringing this up to your students can be content that's quite heavy. It can be very kind of doom and gloom. So this is where we like to kind of jump in and look at steps that you can take for climate action. And so our Flood Ed program is a great way to do this. It provides students and educators such as yourselves with plenty of opportunities to kind of explore and take some of these steps, different ways to kind of get familiar with flooding, some focus on floodplains and watersheds and things like this. So plenty of different kind of strategies that you can use to get students familiar with climate action. So on the next slide here. These are just a few of the activities that are associated with our Flood Ed program. So you have extreme weather inquiry, where students are looking at kind of the implications of climate change on where they live, in their communities, and their surrounding environments. You can look at kind of different climate change topics. You can create a flood resilience plan with your students for your school or for your learning environment or your community. And you can also go a step further by taking a look at our school greening simulator. So this is essentially an interactive kind of tool that's been designed to get students to start thinking about their impact um, on their schools and their communities when it comes to flooding. And yeah, so on the next slide over here, we just have a quick brainstorming session for you folks. So you can pause the video over here and try to brainstorm some ideas or solutions that you can implement at your schools or within your communities to try to make your schoolyards or your kind of parks and things like that, or your community areas a lot more flood resilient. Maybe some of these things are some things that you've already implemented at your schools, so you can kind of chat about those. But yeah, so just you can pause over here and brainstorm some of those. And then ultimately, the goal here is to be able to take some kind of action within your community. And this can be done by taking part in our Flood Ed Challenge as well. So just before we get into that, this is our snapshot of our school greening simulator. And so I'm sure some of these ideas are already things you've come up with. Maybe these are things that you have implemented at your school. And so this is just kind of a virtual way for students to explore what some of these ways are to make your schools more flood resilient. So if that's planting trees and shrubs, or having a green roof, or pavement that's more permeable and allows rainwater to soak through. So lots of different kind of strategies that students can explore on here. And then once you kind of click on these little green circles, it'll kind of populate with whatever you're adding into the school and give you kind of a description of what these features are and what they're doing to protect your school or protect your environment from flooding events. And then we have our Flood Ed Challenge. So this is a great way for students kind of to start taking action within their communities and within their schools. And so our Flood Ed Challenge you're offered with three different options that you can kind of work on through the challenge. So we have a model flooding solution, which is where students will create their own STEAM-based sort of model to test how flooding can affect an area and come up with possible solutions. You have a flood resilience plan that you can put together where you're kind of outlining strategies and different actions that you can take at your school to prepare your school for floods. And then you can also create your own flood action plan. So this is where you're coming up with some innovative ideas. You're documenting all of these ideas and working towards fighting flooding at your school and or your learning environment or your community. All right. So these are just a couple of images from previous students in schools who have taken part in our Flood Ed Challenge. So a couple of different projects that they've worked on, some examples. You can always check these out on our challenge showcase pages. And so these are just some of the projects the students have worked on where they're kind of looking at materials that are a little bit more permeable, maybe things that can be implemented on their school grounds to reduce those impacts of flooding. So lots of cool different programs and projects and stuff there. All right. And yeah, so some of the things that students will kind of learn through our Flood Ed Challenge include understanding how they can be part of a solution. So not just kind of learning about flooding and its impacts, but also kind of taking action to do that, to kind of be part of that solution and reducing those effects of eco-anxiety. They can kind of learn more about how to combat flooding and impacts from natural disasters and how small actions can be made to create much larger impacts. And then you're also just kind of empowering your students as well to take action and kind of take what they've learned back to their communities, talk about it with their families, and kind of create like a ripple effect, sort of, where you're creating more change at a much bigger scale. And then just some kind of connections to the BC curriculum. So the BC curriculum is all about kind of understanding, knowing, and doing. And at Green Learning, we have a very similar kind of focus where we're creating a lot of resources and activities to help students understand very big ideas, know different concepts that are related to environmental issues, and kind of participate in different activities to build skills and take climate action. So lots of different kind of connections and stuff there. And then we'll jump into our challenges. So we talked a lot about our Flood Ed challenge here. We also offer three other challenges as well. So we have our Eco 360 challenge where students are rethinking their plastic use, their plastic waste, and coming up with ways to reinvent plastics. We also have our Energy Reveal Challenge, where students will learn to track their own energy uses in their homes or at their schools. And we have our Re-Energy Challenge as well, where students get to become renewable energy engineers, which is always very exciting. So these challenges are now open as of October 1st, and the deadlines aren't until May 13th. So you have plenty of time to choose one of these challenges as a class, do a project on them, and submit it into us for a chance to win a cash prize. So first place would win up to $1,000, second place wins 500, and third place would win $250. And we do have an early bird deadline as well. So on January, if you have a class of students who are very keen and they end up finishing their projects earlier, you can always submit your projects by January 16th. And this way you'll also be entered into a draw for a free lunch for your class, which is always very exciting. But yeah, I'm glad you guys could all check out our workshop. If you have any other questions or you're hoping to get in touch with us, you can always send us an email at this email address here, check out our website, and you can always sign up for challenges and stuff on our website as well. So yeah, thanks for joining us.